the precursor to this was, I think about a month ago, I was on a panel with Josh, and it was a pretty good one. We were talking about all the most modern ways. It was like over 30 ways you can use AI to utilize, over 30 ways you can use AI to leverage in your startup and gain traction, right? That was the main thing. How do you use AI to gain traction, to gain clients, right? What's the newest? And DeepSeek has been a big topic, so I'll probably ask about LLMs later on. But before we dive right in, there's a million questions I have. I just like to do what you did. I'm gonna steal from your book on the panels. Why don't you guys do some intros on yourself? 30 seconds. Talk about what interests you in AI, and I'd like you to tell the crowd, how was it when you first started it, and then where do you think it's going today? So during your intro, go ahead.
Yeah, so hello.
I guess you can start this. I'll try to.
Awesome. So like I mentioned, Nicolas Garfinkle. I first learned about AI and LLMs. I want to say about 2.5 years ago. Someone I'd worked with, his wife is actually in the CTO's office at Microsoft, and her job was to be the liaison between Microsoft and OpenAI, and he was telling me all about this, and I thought it was absolutely insane, but we jumped right in and tried to build basically what Jasper.ai turned into. And I remember going to Thanksgiving and showing my family, look at this thing, look how good it is, it can do poems, and that's pretty much it, because it keeps hallucinating. But it was so fascinating to me, and I kind of just fell in love, and so now it's become a huge part of everything I do. My product is grounded in a ton of AI. Every day I'm using AI. My wife uses AI now for everything from recipes to, hey, our kid's doing this thing, like what's good parenting techniques. So it's become a huge part of our life, and I have this really doomsday vision of where society is going to be in 5 years that I'll tell you guys about later, but not here, because it's just going to make you sad.
That's a good start. Go ahead. Why don't you do an intro and kind of your experience with it so far? Yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to try not to repeat everything you said that I agree with. So my name is Toba. I'm kind of building a startup right now, definitely focused on AI, how to leverage AI for marketing. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. Before I was a CTO for Nordstrom Rack, where I had to interact with a lot of people doing a lot of the creative process that AI now suggests that there's new alternatives. So that is where I come from. I believe that there's some things that can be delegated to the machine, like eventually we delegated to Excel some stuff, or delegated to OneDrive to keep my files instead of me having folders, so on and so forth. So I'm super excited about that possibility. Still see that the potential for us is to transform the world in a place that is much larger than it is today. Like what I'm finding is that the limitations are because we humans have some limitations. Once the technology opens up, there's no limitations. So the idea that you have one career doesn't seem to be that of a requirement, or having certain one things because you have one body might not be a thing. So there might be some other possibilities that we haven't even thought about. And I'm super excited about the possibilities of me having me multiple times, whatever that means, and my relationships, my community, and my career. So I'm looking forward to the beautiful part of it.
Awesome. I'm Josh Dirks. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Project Bionic. We are a social first agency that I established 15 years ago. I started playing with AI. Well, I started having big conversations about AI about 7 years ago, and about 5 really myself got personally involved and started really using a lot of the tools and trying to just kind of understand the landscape. And over the last 2.5 years, have started really building out a lot of AI tools inside of our agency that we continue to use, but also using AI in a lot of ways of doing early research and analysis and understanding things like, hey, if I'm going after mothers, here's 100 different bots that are all look like mothers, and they're running across the website, and they're telling me whether they convert or not, right? And starting to give me an understanding of those types of things. And then we also look at our agency and where we spend most of our man hours right now. And so where those human hours are going in, that's just a repeat step and repeat. We're trying to replace that with AI right now. So really looking at a strategic kind of way of enhancing our business. While a lot of people say that AI is going to push pricing down, I think that if you're a smart agency, you continue to have the human factor, and you can actually make more money and make yourself more profitable at the end of the day when it comes to your agency business.
Great answer, Josh. And you guys may have seen me before. I'm Vlad from the previous panel, huh? Same guy. You remember that? Yeah, that's Josh, of course. Basically, to actually riff off what Josh just said, I did say one thing right about AI, which is it's going to democratize everything more than ever. Ad spend is going up, right, for everybody because everybody can now run ads easier than ever before. But what happens is, right, if you guys understand the bell curve, right, then the extremes get wider and wider as well. So that means that the top players and the top performers are going to have even more outsized returns because they're going to be even better. With that said, you guys already know me, et cetera. Nick, would love for you to answer, since we're kind of talking about your early experiences, what is it able to do now that you didn't maybe even think it was able to do in terms of marketing and business use cases?
I think a lot of it has to do with just the exponential growth in context windows. And so when I first started playing with it, it was like, you had to limit your prompt to a few sentences because the output was also going to be a few sentences, and you couldn't give it a ton of information. And if you did, it would, mess up all the attention of what you're trying to write in the prompt. And next thing you knew, you're getting gibberish anyways. And so just the pace at which it's evolved to the place where now you can, upload an entire PDF that's 50 pages long, and it's able to intelligently, search through that document. Granted, that's probably, more of like a RAG system or something like that, but the amount of context you can fit, I think like the future is an unlimited context, and ChatGPT has memory now where it knows everything about you and what you've been talking to it about. Like, I think that's the most surprising thing for me.
Yeah, and Brian actually, it was kind of an alley-oop question for him because he actually saw a huge opportunity with it for his startup. So you want to tell the audience kind of where you see the potential and the possibilities?
Yeah. So my startup focuses on transforming your customer data or my client's customer data directly into marketing creatives. So I think some of the stuff that we're talking about, like using Canva as a tool that you can actually communicate to the machine what you want to do, actually we can let the data drive that process. So the building of the template, its filling, and its personalization fan that is within your brand context. That is kind of like what you do in Excel when you drop a formula and now your smartness now gets replicated in multiple rows. This is the future for marketing. So we're focusing on that. And what we found is that a lot of these processes depend on humans to be the ones that provide the creative pixie dust for group number one. And somebody has to identify in group number two. So we've found like if humans were doing a lot of the data analysis, a lot of humans doing copywriting, a lot of humans doing graphic design, layout decisions, and templating, rendering, or some of the things that we're talking that are often heavy human involved and repeating, and even the employee doesn't really like to do the work. They will much rather manage the machine that actually blends this thing, but they can actually put the ingredients and make the great drink. So I'm looking forward to push back the human to the true creative responsibility, but not the mechanical execution, where we can now give directions to the machine to do what we need to do within the boundaries that we need, and we just need is the tools to help you bound the AI and control its challenges, because it has challenges and limitations that can crash the car, as mentioned before.
Yeah, the crash the car, you guys really love that one, huh? And then Josh, you've obviously used really cutting edge technology. What did you think it was capable of when it first came out, and what's it surprised you with in terms of marketing usage?
Well, I think initially, whenever it started, the large language models and just starting to compress data quickly and summarize data fast and stuff like that, I was like, oh, this is cool, this is going to make us better. What I didn't expect to come about so quickly is how hyper-personalized, as Brian was just talking about, how hyper-personalized you can go through and create a campaign and then iterate on that. Like we used to always talk about Project Bionic, hey, when we launch a paid campaign for you in social, we're gonna use 4 very distinct layouts, right? And 4 very distinct kind of themes to things. And within the first 10 days, we're gonna shut off the underperforming 2, optimize the next 2, and go from there. In 2 more weeks, we're gonna find the king of the hill, version that 100 times, and get your campaign going. We ran a campaign in December that had 172 pieces of creative from the jump, and within a few hours, it was starting to optimize the campaign and starting to create new looks and feels that they were saying that said, "Hey, this is going to work." We were able to drive the lead form for this client through the roof, and they were like, "What happened?" And as we started walking through it, it was just amazing how fast it was being able to process and be able to iterate on the creative we had given it. So I also go back to the human side. Human in the loop is such an important aspect of AI, and you got to have yourself in there working. But if you are working in that, One thing I would say is document that work, because we started building guardian bots now that sit on top of things and are starting to go ahead and govern like a human in a loop would, which has been a really interesting thing. And now with they're in an air where it's, at an 80 percentile or lower, it'll kick it into a feed where a human engage with it. But if it's 80% and above, it just starts optimizing and going and doing things. So really think about human in the loop, and then how you can also go ahead and automate some of that process to certain, scores and sophistication.
Okay. Next question here for you, Nick. Right. I think you're building like a AI integrated SEO tool. And I can, I guess, get revenge and ask you the same question you asked me, right? So for, you're building in a startup and you're trying to utilize AI for marketing, right? What are kind of some of the latest and greatest techniques you recommend the audience out there utilize for their companies to help them save some time and money?
So I use it like somebody sitting right next to me. I use it for brainstorming. I use it for working through problems. I use it for copy review. If I write a blog post, I say, what's wrong with this blog post, poke it apart, right? And that gives me, oh, shoot, I didn't think about this or that, or this argument stinks. Let me go fix that. And that's how I make great content. When I go to create an email campaign for my clients, or even a paid search campaign, and I put together all the keyword themes that I'm going to use it on, I'm going to run it through ChatGPT and understand kind of like, hey, these are ones that I missed. So I'm still the one kind of driving a lot of the exploration and kind of thinking, but I'm using it to help make me smarter and do things that maybe I wouldn't have caught initially. So I would say that's a really big one. The other side, obviously, is like, if you care about data, like AI plus ML is like a really powerful combination. We use a lot of machine learning in our product to predict outcomes for search engines and rankings and things like that. We use an incredible amount of AI to build feature sets to help as inputs for our machine learning models. And so I think those two things have really been the big drivers for us. And
That's great. What about you, Brian? Actually, Brian, since he does have a startup, right, he can talk about how he's been using it to validate his own startup ideas. How have you integrated the marketing piece with AI?
Yeah, and so we're building a product that we would love to use. So it's kind of like we get a chance to dog food our own product, the concept of eating your own product, even if it's for dogs. And the concept of you truly needs to be tasty, right, if you're going to give it to your customer. So what we do is actually we try to actually sometimes make challenges of, we're not going to write our newsletter and we're not going to modify it. We are only allowed to modify the prompt or the rules that we use to generate it. And we're going to keep playing this game, and we're going to spend this 15 minutes not fine-tuning it, but trying to fine-tune the rules. Because that makes it so the next week, when we actually swap the interesting thing that we found that week on AI that we want to highlight, the system is going to make sure that it extracts the quote. Sometimes it will just highlight and just link. Sometimes it will actually suggest the image from the 2 or 3 hero images that were on the meta tags of the SEO. And now we have a whole brief of a few options, and we can now pick and choose, with the idea of eventually delegating that task to what it truly is, a process. Because if you've had employees that across different families, you have been doing something like this. You describe the role, the person performs the job, then you come back, you have a rubric to evaluate it, and then you keep going in the process. So every single time that you've done that, you have to ask your question, can I do that with AI? If the answer is no, keep doing it with humans. That is actually the way that you solve it. But sometimes the answer is, yeah, I can cut this part, give it to the system, and I can keep this other part. And that's productivity, cost, speed, more satisfaction, whatever it is, that value that your business drives. So that is the question that you constantly need to ask.
can I add something to that? So if you look at basically, they evaluate large language models on, you can say what you want about how they evaluate them, but there is a score generated. And if you look at the pace of the new versions coming out and how the score is improving, it's exponential in a literal sense. Not like when people are like, oh, it's exponential, it's going up fast. Like, it is literally exponential. And so anyone using these AI models, ELM models, the reasoning, the decision making, it's all going to continue to get better. And the most important thing you can do is, to your point, give it the right information, the right prompt to make sure that you're getting the information that you want out of it. And over time, you're going to benefit for free, basically, all the investments that OpenAI and team are making. But if just like a junior employee, if you gave them really bad instructions, you're going to get a really bad output. And so spending that time to really hone and understand what you're going to get out of, the LM, I think, is like critically important.
And Josh, where have you seen like startups utilize AI for marketing channels? Any great combinations you've seen personally?
I think that, so from a startup's perspective, I've seen a lot of people do a lot, like build in a virtual boardroom, so almost sort of brainstorming where they have different roles within the organization. And you begin to ask it questions and really understand some of the issues you're going to face or challenges that you might not have seen, and it can be a great brainstorming partner, understanding where that's coming from and where you're going to have to tackle it. We have a virtual boardroom that has kind of all this C-level suite people in it, but then we have a compliance and a legal bot outside the room. So when it's feeding out the answer, the legal and compliance bot will go check and be like, oh, this doesn't work in 25 states, and we'll feed it back into the room, right, for them to solve on things. So I think that if you're going after something really highly technical, or if you're in the health and wellness space or a place that's really regulated, depending on how long it's still regulated, at the end of the day, going through and being able to use that to brainstorm and find issues or find blind spots in your business plan or your finance plan can be a really big help on things. The other thing I would say is that as you start to think about who your market is, the tools have gotten way better at deep research and identification of customer types and what's going on and what their motivations are and things like that. So really test and challenge that. I think Brian, again, is really smart about eating his own dog food or his own technology and building that. But I think also testing that outside your walls, because I think as you start to build a product, you begin to fall in love with it. And so as you fall in love with it, challenging that and making sure that you're getting outside perspective in that might challenge, like, oh, that's not how other people use it, or that's not how this user type would use it. We have to think about that user flow now in a different way. So I think it can be a really great thing of highlighting some of the challenges, identifying holes that you might not have seen, and really helping you hone in your decks and things. I've seen one startup that I've been working with, they're taking the LinkedIn profile modules of who they're pitching, and they're putting it in and sending their deck by it and saying, what will this person say about this? And they're getting a score on it, and they're redoing their pitch decks depending on and personalizing them to whoever that LinkedIn person is, right? So that can be a really powerful thing if you're in the money raising round as well.
One thing I have mentioned last time, but I thought people liked it, which was you can use AI in the early days to identify major influencers in whatever spaces you're in, right? Whether it's gaming or bakery, I'm sorry, that one stands out, or other industries. You can very quickly identify key influencers and use it for market research. Speaking of research, and you guys might have heard that people love this vehicle, kind of pun that I'm using. If AI is the vehicle, then data, as I like to say, is the new oil, right? Data is more useful than ever. Nick, where would you suggest people go to find more data as related to their company? And then also, what types of data do you think you should be holding on to and utilizing for your marketing campaign? Because, you got to organize it, store it, all that stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, if you have a full-time job working in marketing at a major tech company or a large company, there's an infinite amount of information and data at your fingertips. There's a database for everything. What page people visited, what commands did they run, what errors did they run into, what customer support tickets did they get, what was their concerns, what was their tone. All that data is available to you, and as a single marketer, you don't have the time to actually look at all of that. You just don't. There's too much of it. You have a whole day of other things to do. And so I think for understanding, the value of all that data, recording it, keeping it in a place where you can feed an LLM. A lot of people use, RAG to basically read the database and pull in the right things that matter, use it to analyze data quickly. I think that's really going to be critical to success for any business trying to build some kind of competitive data moat. A good example, we keep talking about this bakery business of yours, but if you think about the amount of information you guys have about all the bakeries in Seattle and outwards, right? And what types of products are interesting and exciting. Do people care about, chocolate chip cookies or whatever those little almond cookie things are that I can't eat? Having all that information is at your fingertips and be able to reference it in an LLM and get insight is going to be just critically important.
Yeah. What about Brian? I know you're more on the enterprise side, but what about maybe in the early days, right? When you were trying to get to know your type of client, what types of maybe data or prompts, like some of these people here are still validating their ideas, right? What would you look at? What would you maybe even prompt in to start getting useful answers for market research?
Yeah. So I think that there was an example of having multiple customers or multiple personas, multiple moms. I think it was example. of you being able to ask the question to multiple personas. And I think that's a really good example. Having conversations with what you think your ideal customer profile might be. I'm going after marketing directors that are having challenges creating marketing creatives at scale. And then we can have a conversation. I have this offering. What are your challenges? If I verbalize it like this, can you describe the problem space in 5 different ways? And you can now get these 5 options, and you become the human in the loop, pick a few of them, let's iterate on this ones, and you start doing the brainstorming. So I think that you can do a lot of that role playing as long as you are able to judge that the thing is not hallucinating and it's completely going crazy. The other reality is that there's a lot of data available out there. Like you would find data from universities that have done studies and they've either scraped the data or they've gotten from an institution and now they've published it for backing up the research, and you might have enough data, or Hugging Face is full of data that actually might have some of the stuff you're looking for. As a startup, you should be scraping all the data that you need because that's definitely the way to go about actually testing stuff. But I think that going back to another part of the previous question, I think it's important to find out which data you generate that nobody else has. And I think that could be some of the comments that you get in your posts, some of the reactions that people have to the emails that you send about a follow-up on a sale, maybe some of the complaints that people send when they file a ticket. That is information that you have that nobody else has. So if you can find a conclusion there, nobody else will reach that conclusion. And that will become a moat that you can amplify through a product, experience, or service. If that becomes in companies that have a lot of data flowing through, those are places where there's a lot of mining. That is, I guess, what Nicolas was saying about large corporations already have that data. But I think that you should check because that data you might be generating it, or your customer might have it, and you're the one that is going to unlock it, like my startup does.
Good luck answering after those 2 answers, Josh. Or is
I even forgot the question. I'm just thinking about cookies now, everybody being mad at Costco about their new muffins.
Yeah. To remind the audience again, it's if AI is the vehicle, right? Data is the new oil, right? That's one of the most valuable commodities out there nowadays. So how do you suggest these startup co-founders out there, right? A, find data, and B, what types of data should they be holding on to for their marketing campaigns to make their business more successful?
Yeah, I think you've had great suggestions from the other 2 panelists here, so I'm not going to belabor that. I think if you are not going to be competitive, go out and find customers that would be your customers and see if you can bring them in on an early alpha or beta to get additional data from them. We've been working with a former head of AI for all the big companies, and he's been building a tool since last summer. We've been feeding him data, and for that we got access to it early and are watching the tool and helping with the roadmap of it. So if you have a tool like that, that can be a great place to get real live data. Every Monday we do a huge upload of data to them. They crunch it, they're looking at it, and they're feeding us back what that experience is. So that can be a great way of, once you're kind of in that mode, to be able to test that stuff. I think, though, the one thing I would say is that when you look at sentiment data and you look at customer feedback data, I personally think that's the canary in the coal mine for a lot of companies. And there's so many companies I see that are, A, not even doing community management on their pages, which I find crazy, but secondarily, discounting a lot of that. And we found that it can be pure gold. So whenever you start to analyze that and understand what your top issues are last month or top issues with your product are and that kind of stuff, that should be flowing into your content calendar to be content, whether it's blogs or videos or social posts or whatever that is. And that, as customers find that, they begin to share with each other. We had a car seat company. Mothers would see our tips and hints that was based on their complaints from the month before, and these mommy blogs would just start feeding in links about this stuff and how to solve that problem. And what we ended up seeing is that our call center rates started to drop pretty dramatically. We had almost a 60% drop in calls around just regular product stuff, right? Which was a huge savings to the client at the end of the day. But it was very simple of just listening to that and storing that data because, as Brian said, that's your proprietary data. They're talking about your service, your tool, your tech, that kind of stuff. And so really listen to that kind of stuff and use that to hone in and build content or build call-outs inside, a UX or something like that, because that really helps you at the end of the day.
Great. Next question here, switching gears a little bit. So, there's all these different marketing channels from Facebook to SEO, cold email, et cetera. Where have you seen the most leverage in terms of, utilizing a channel with AI for up and coming startups versus where do you think we still haven't really discovered the most valuable use cases? Right. And Nick, why don't we start with you? Because SEO is probably the easiest answer of the four. Yeah.
So I'm actually going to surprise you a little bit. I found paid search to be where I've seen the most leverage, largely because as it shifted to, like we talked last time, PMAX and all this automation, a lot of the things you need to be doing are more technical. Like, how do I set up my data feeds correctly to mark back conversions? How do I move that conversion funnel downhill? How do I install Google Tag Manager? Things like that. Like, those are all things that I think in the past, startup might have to go find some developer to go do, and half of them don't know what they're doing, and then it's implemented wrong, and you don't find out for a year. The other half are really expensive, and so you're able to do that now just by using, AI and ask it questions and work through the process and give it the code that you're working on and get it back. Same with like even just front end development. I do a lot of coding myself. I hate front end development. If you do front end, like, there's so much respect for you. I don't get it. But I built, like, in the last week and a half, I built this really cool AI app that interviews my clients in AI using AI, and then writes creative briefs for my writers. And there's a whole front end to it that I didn't write any code for. I just asked AI. And so I think it lets startups move really, really fast and expand their skill set and do things they're not comfortable doing or have no idea what to do.
Brian?
Dude, I'm in the same exact. And this is the part that fascinates me about AI, is how fast you can move as a developer. I thought I was a great developer, and I was super fast, and I could produce a lot of value. But I can easily produce 10 times as much right now. And it's unbelievable. Unbelievable in the sense that if you're starting your career a year before me, I'm going to have a year's time to do 10x productivity. So I'm going to drop a full decade while you're still finishing your senior year. Like, that is the amount of, if that is happening in development, it's happening in marketing, it's happening in finance, it's happening in SEO, it's happening in the agency. So that is the new reality. Like, some people are about to do a decade's work in a year. So you either get on top of it and actually do a 10 years, or you just wait and I'll be 9 years ahead of. That is the reality that I find. And in developers, it's very clear. What I find, that one of the things that I think you're not mentioning, and it also happens to me, that we happen to be with being experts on software development, and now we're at the point that the tool, when it makes a mistake, but it makes a mistake often. I know exactly where it is. I can see the mistake. It's like if it writes a sentence and it doesn't match the number of the sentence, I'll be able to understand there's a mistake, and I will be like, no, that's not the right word, change it. But my 6-year-old daughter wouldn't be able to do it. So there's this thing that you still need to be, and something that feels like expert enough to be able to judge if the plumber did the right thing. Before they close the wall, can you look at a plumbing job and know if it's working? If not, when they close the wall up and the water doesn't come out, you're liable because you're the one that accepted that as a completed work. So that will happen with AI at a decade, a year amount of mistake or success. And you have to be very careful too. And what I found is like a big thing, and this is more of a cautionary tale. AI will make mistakes. So asking questions in areas where you can judge that mistake has happened is extremely important. Because if not, I will tell that you use AI. Because I am an expert and I can tell that your output is nonsense for somebody that claims that this whole sentence has the confidence of being completely right. And I know that it's wrong. So it sticks out like a sore thumb when you don't know what you're doing. So try to find a way to balance that. You can't stop learning. You can use it, but you have to also speed up the way that you learn so you can keep catching it, and you don't show up as an emperor with no clothes.
Josh, what about you? Any marketing channels that you think AI should be utilized with, like, right away if you're a startup co-founder in the audience? And are there any kind of, maybe commercial television? I don't know. I haven't heard any real great use cases, right, that you think are not as good of a use today. Maybe they will be in the future.
AI still has a hard time judging air, so TV will still be tough for it, I think. I think because of where the tools are at right now, anything where you're getting a large amount of data, so whether that's SEO, pay-per-click, paid ads, OTT, that kind of stuff, you can do a lot of really quick innovation and optimization of campaigns, and it can be really beneficial to you. I think that we all know that the holy grail right now is that TikTok style portrait content, right? And as much as we play with tools and as much as we continue to goof with them, I'm not seeing that the tools will be there, and I believe they'll get there, but there's still a large limitation of making it look authentic and on brand and that kind of stuff. And so I think that's one big limitation right now, but I don't think it'll be a limitation, and maybe to Brian's point, in 20 years, but in 2, like, I think that you're going to see a lot, and I'm seeing a lot of different stuff going on in that space with generative AI and where it's headed to. So I think that that's one limitation. So as a startup thinking about how you're going to get your message out there and what you're going to do with it, those short, snackable pieces of content that are video style are still something that are going to have to be created. Now your scripts and what you need to say and some of the other stuff there's tons of AI tools for that, so it can definitely limit the production that used to have to go in just even 18 months ago. So that's awesome stuff. I'll say that if you want to use generative AI to create video content, what we often do is do a full audio file of talking and laying it all out about what you're trying to do in your video, almost like you would do a storyboard, and then feed in your brand assets to it and see if it can help you that way. But it's still really complex. I know that there's a startup, that's over at UW right now that's doing a whole thing around virtual AI spokespeople, so they never get drunk, they never go out and run into anybody, they never hit anybody, that kind of thing, but it's yours. What's really cool with it has very human-like characteristics. You can hone it in, but they have a whole module where I can have a female spokesperson be talking to my camera, and she can be giving that message out there. So again, this is where I say that, in less than 2 years, I don't think this will be a limitation, but right now, if you're starting out, that would be a big area to just mention.
Awesome. And one thing I'd like to add also in terms of, AI usage for effective channels. I don't know if Sean, my SEO panel buddy, is out there. There you are. So yeah, site build outs, right? Building a website has never been easier, faster, right? So I have friends now who are just literally trying to game the hell out of Google. Even though it's less effective, they can build 100 more websites, right? And they'll build 100 pages faster than ever for service pages. So that's somewhere that I'm, seeing people be able to get a really good return right now, on the technical element. With that said, Nick, do you have, I guess any kind of innovative uses you've seen to kind of get where startups get an edge in terms of marketing campaigns that you think either might be temporary or just are here to stay?
Yeah, I mean, innovative approaches. So I think it's kind of the same as what we're doing today, just faster, right? So if you're going to go create a newsletter, being able to jot down your thoughts and use AI to craft the whole content for you, and now you did, it would have taken you 2 hours to do in 15 minutes. It's still your original thought, your perspective, but now you have something written out on your thoughts that you go and edit. Like, that's going to move so much faster. You go to write a new landing page for some service you're building, same deal, right? You start with your thoughts, you ask GPT or whatever LLM to help you expand on that, and then you go edit from there. Everything you're doing is so much faster. And if you have ever managed a team, that's kind of how it works, with your more junior employees. You give them direction, you give them your thoughts and where you want it to go, and they come back with a product, and then you either give them feedback, or you take it and edit it from there. So I don't think there's anything like truly special or innovative that a small startup can do using AI. I think it's all about just doing so much more, so much faster, and doing things in areas you don't understand. As you get more scale, yeah, you can start doing some really interesting things with like programmatic ads and stuff like that. But as a startup, you're not going to have that scale, and chances are that's not where you want to spend your money. So, I think it's really just about speeding things up and kind of being able to do everything all at once.
What about you, Brian? When you're getting off the ground, did you use it to, hack anything faster together from the marketing side?
Yeah, one of the things that I did, because I was doing a lot of research with customers at the same time that I'm doing outbound sales, I used Fathom as my video call recording. It's like a Zoom recording. I don't know if you've tried it, Fathom. And Fathom at the end, when you get the transcript and it extracts some of the to-do list that you have to do that is not so complex, there's a section that you can ask questions to the transcript. And I have this very long prompt that asks, is there a quote that the person said that is positive about the brand, a quote that is negative? What would be a big problem space that they talked about, and what is the way that they suggest the solution should be, and what is the abstract for a blog post that actually would address that point so that person would have a positive opinion? And that is just a long sentence, and then I just get this report of like maybe 7 or 8 sections that has every single attempt that I think could come out of a call, 5 of them are going to be bad or like not that great. But then I'll be like, this call is the one that almost got me the quote. This is the problem, and this is what goes into my content calendar to solve it. So Fathom became a little bit of the data that I generate that is proprietary, that I can ask them, was I convincing when I explained this? How would you have explained it differently to achieve this? And then I use that recommendation as my brain trust, and then I just try it out. It's an A/B test. I'll try it next time if it makes sense, and if it doesn't, well, just keep going.
So in other words, basically using something like Fathom with maybe in conjunction, you could even use it with like ChatGPT or DeepSeek. He doesn't like it, but basically to isolate different variables in whatever text or data you're looking at to give you more market research, more market data. Am I right?
And
Yeah.
Be systematic about it, so you start building a rhythm that you can compare to previous calls, and you can see progress, and now you're being data-driven about decisions.
100% agree, by the way. We also use the same thing for sales calls, right? Which you guys can for customer interviews. You know, how could you pitch that, right? Or what else could you say differently that's even more compelling versus competitors that can give you guys an edge? And then Josh, I'll let you finish it off.
I mean, if I was a startup right now and I was going out, I would be looking, you know, Jasper or whatever Brian's building. Jasper is one of those tools that if you just spend 60, 90 days with it, it will turbocharge your marketing efforts in a whole different way. And I've seen a lot of startups be able to become very scrappy and very nimble with using that tool and be able to put out great content and really well thought out stuff. So that would be one of my recommendations. I think secondarily to that, if you are in a business that has proposals, you know, one of the beauties of a proposal is customizing that to your audience. We built a custom node now that we sit on Zoom. It takes the notes for us. You go to a form, you put your contact LinkedIn, the LinkedIn profile of that customer, put their social feeds into it, and upload the notes to it and hit go, and it then starts to talk over to our custom node. It totally customizes our 42-page slide deck to that person and how they talk about things. And what their hopes and fears are, and it then goes ahead and PDFs that for me, writes a note to whoever that prospect is based upon their title, and gives me a Slack notification that proposal is ready to go in like 4 minutes. And I'll go in and look at it and customize it. It's been very interesting since we started this 5 months ago. I've had multiple customers come back to me and go, hey, how do you write your proposals? And so I'll hem and haw and walk around the barn and try to, you know, make up some big excuse on things. And female founder business, they said, we read your proposal, we were in tears. It spoke to everything that we feel as female founders. Like this spoke to our, like what we want and what we dream of. And we just believe you can be that partner. We had a new ice cream brand that came to us. He goes, you used a term inside your proposal that I've only used inside my walls. He's like, how did you get to that? And he said the term was Maverick Ice Cream Company. And I was like, oh, we're just super bright people over here. Of course, what do you think? But I think when you think about what I see the long-term game of AI being is hyper-personalization. I started the Project Bionic on the idea of narrowcasting or sliver casting. If you think about the world of customers out there, 40% of people are never going to care about you unless you're selling water or air. So why pay money to reach them? Cleave them off and then look at that 60% and turn them upside down and look at the substrates of that and find out who your early adopters and movers are, find who's going to follow that, and then the mass will follow that. But I always tell people, hone down and niche down. Like, stop trying to go after millions and billions. Most people don't understand the difference between a million and a billion first, so that's always an interesting conversation to have. But like, we want audiences of like 10,000 people. That's what we're looking for at Project Bionic, because we know we can drive relevance and significance with them because we know something about them. And as the old sales adage goes, no one cares about what you have to say till you prove you care about them. And what I see a ton of people doing, especially in my realm of social, is just talking about whatever the hell the brand wants to talk about instead of listening to the customer and feeding that back out, right? So if you're in startup mode, really leverage the tools and really think about your customer and put content out that's valuable to them. Somebody talked about Freakonomics earlier, which I thought was great because I was like, oh my gosh, but Socialnomics by Eric Qualman is an amazing read. I still give it to my 60-plus-year-old executives that don't believe in social media. But he talks about the 60-30-10 rule in the book. 60% of the content you create needs to be of value or benefit to your user. And I think that as socials permeate the whole web, from blogs to everything you're doing, you should really focus on that. 30% can be direct promotion of what you do, and 10% should be personality. Over the last 10 years, we flipped that. So 30% is who you are uniquely and your personality of the brand, and only 10% is promotion, because people now are smart enough in how they use social that they know it's a brand posting, right? But really think about that and use AI tools to enhance that. And if you're using a tool like Jasper and constantly giving it information and feedback, it will really hone in for you pretty quickly.
Yeah, speaking of tools, that was actually going to be the next question, right? So for these startup founders out there, you know, this space is rapidly changing. Are there tools you think are going to be more valuable in the future, and which ones should they be using today that you found personally useful? And then B, any other kind of sources of information? As I don't know how much time we have left. I think we're coming to the end here, but any other news sources or places they should go to keep in touch with, you know, useful tools and, you know, tips and tricks, et cetera?
As far as the tool set goes, I mean, everybody kind of knows the big players out there. I've tried to play with all of them on an equal level, and I actually take stuff from ChatGPT and give it to Gemini and have Gemini beat it up, and then go over to Copilot and have them beat it up, right? I think using tools like that, there's also tools like Julius.ai that's amazing for data visualization, so it can take a huge spreadsheet for you and also build a beautiful graph. So there's a lot of specialty AI out there right now, which I personally think those are in jeopardy of going away as these models continue to advance and people understand how to augment them. But a great tool that I found is a newsletter called Ben's Bites. He puts out a newsletter every day that has like 10 great tools at the top, and then it has a whole different list down there. And I have a spreadsheet now, like cool AI tools. They had one for a travel agent the other day. An AI travel agent, I was sitting in my layover in Los Angeles waiting to get on an airplane, and the gal next to me was planning this trip to Belize, and I said, hey, have you ever heard of this tool? And she was like, no. And so she popped it up on her machine and put in her likes and preferences, and within like 10 minutes, it had her whole agenda and everything to her budget all done. So it's stuff like that that I think is really interesting, and I know that doesn't apply to marketing, but I just think it's fun, kind of interesting, and Ben's Bites gives a lot of that kind of information on a daily basis, so it's a great read.
Brian, tools or you know, kind of sources for staying on the edge?
Definitely. Well, I'm a technologist or a developer, and I like to be very close to what kind of like technology tools, and then extrapolate the value to the customers. So I think for me, I love the Hugging Face, just updates what's flowing, and that brings me to very different niches within the internet. I don't think that I have a really good one more than just follow each one of those paths. The Fathom thing for recording calls, super important, and of course, your email client is already trying to help you write some stuff, using Gemini for documents, summarization.
I'd be curious to actually ask the audience, who here is actually using something like Read.ai or Fathom to go into meetings? So that's actually surprising. I would say probably all of you guys should be using them to summarize meetings for action items and store data. So
we recorded even one-on-one meetings.
Oh yeah. Do you want to explain Fathom and Read.ai
okay.
and these note-taker tools and why
Fathom,
they're useful?
Fathom. Did I just spell it right? Fathom? Fathom. Yeah, Fathom. Whatever, fathom.ai, I believe is the URL. Mm-hmm. So you're going to find it's a little F in blue. And what it does is a bot that you can invite to your Google Meet or Zoom call. It will let people know that you're being recorded, and now it would record a video of your whole call with the screen share, and you will know exactly who was talking and who was saying everything in a transcript. And then you get the chance to synchronize that to your HubSpot or CRM system. You will be able to ask questions on it, and you'll be able to share it to somebody else. So you can say, hey, this is a conversation that I had with Josh when Josh didn't understand this thing. Can you listen to this call and tell me how should I follow up with Josh because I screwed up? And then my other teammate will come and help. Or he could go into conversation, Josh, I got a chance to see the recording that you had with Brian, and I just can pick up the conversation from there, and you get all the context. So use that recording. Fireflies is another.
Yeah, it's another note-taker tool.
No, Fireflies and Fathom are two different companies, but Otter AI.
Otter.ai, these are all note-taker AI tools. Yeah, keep going.
So I learned this from Nicole Donnelly, who was on our panel a month ago. So I learned this at Venture Mechanics, so I'm giving out. So Meeting.ai is really an interesting note taker because it does a lot of the same things everybody else does. But what it does is actually tell you where the customer checks out in the call and how responsive they are. And you can literally see where they don't understand, and you can click into that part of the meeting. So if you have a big team that's doing lots of meetings with clients that you can't be on every call, that's a really important thing. I have the top 10 moments our clients check out email to me every night, and I look at that, and I'll talk to my account manager or myself will reach out to the client and say, hey, I noticed that in the call the other night, it didn't seem like you totally understood that conversation. We might have missed your point. Should we just clarify that, right? And it's been very helpful in helping me understand, but that was a Nicole Donnelly tip from our last AI chat here.
Yeah, and that's a great one, obviously, for customer discovery calls and interviews using me.ai. Nick, you want to take us home here with tools and then sources?
Yeah, so I'd say for sources, I'm a big Hacker News fan. I think anything interesting and cutting edge is going to go, front page there. So believe it or not, Reddit, if you follow any of the, AI subreddits, there's always some interesting stuff mixed in with a bunch of, whatever. OpenAI is like research tab, and all the other AI companies have their own research tab where they talk about kind of what they're innovating on. I think that's a really good one. And then if you're feeling really adventurous, I go to Google Scholar every so often and just look at, papers in the last month and just see if there's anything with an interesting enough title for me to actually spend the time reading. I think those are probably the best sources, and you do any one of those things, you're going to be probably up to speed. In terms of AI tools for marketing, I think all the, you're sending emails, all those email platforms are already doing that, right? Like instantly.ai is a good one, or LY, whatever it is. But they use AI to send warm-up emails to other accounts, and so it fakes engagement to let ISPs think that, you've good open rates, and now you can go send deliverables on emails that you couldn't before. Like, they're doing weird hacky stuff there. Google Ads has PMax, and they're automating pretty much everything. If anyone's trying to build any paid search specific tools, I think it's moving too fast for you to be successful there. So there's not a whole lot going on there. On the SEO side, like if you're hitting content, like you mentioned, Jasper is a great place for content and research and things like that. OpenAI has Deep Research, which is an insane tool. Although I think you have to pay like $200 a month right now to get access to it. So I don't think you necessarily need to go search for one-off tools to help accelerate what you're doing from a marketing perspective using AI. I think all those tools are going to get integrated into the platforms you're already using, and the best thing you can do is actually play with them and use them. Even if they kind of suck today, they're going to be incredible tomorrow, and you want to be there when they are incredible, because that's how you're going to scale and outpace your competitors.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.